In the choking humidity of a Virginia summer, a 6-year-old girl lay trembling among the damp, rotting leaves, the ground swallowing her shallow breaths. Venom coursed through her veins from the rattlesnake strike, mixing with blood beneath. Her pale skin, her tiny fingers stretched weakly toward the tall figure walking away the man in a tailored navy suit who didn't once look back. His footsteps, measured and unhurried, vanished into the thick woods. "Daddy," she whispered, barely audible, her voice cracking as the poison spread. "Please don't leave me." But he didn't stop. He never looked back. He left her, there to die in silence. Through eyes blurred with tears and pain, she noticed movement in the thicket. A German shepherd, broad-chested and battle-worn, stepped into view, its eyes a deep amber that shimmered with something close to understanding. The dog paused, nostrils flaring as it caught the scent of the snake. As the world around her dimmed, the child saw in that animal's face a fierce concern, something she had never once seen in her father's. What this dog would do next would challenge every belief humans held about loyalty, instinct, and love. Leave a like and tell us what city you're watching from now. Let's continue. Richard Blackwood cut an imposing figure at 6'2", his suits imported from Milan, his silver cufflinks gleaming with understated wealth. At 42, his sharp jawline and ice-blue eyes gave him the polished veneer of a man people obeyed. From his office tower in Charlottesville, he surveyed the same mountains he was steadily carving into private estates and resort enclaves. His brand was transformation. A photo on his desk showed Richard and his glowing wife Rebecca on a sunny vineyard, Daisy pregnant and laughing. But there were no pictures of Emily. His daughter didn't fit the narrative. 6-year-old Emily had inherited Rebecca's chestnut hair and soft features, but none of Richard's detachment. Born with severe asthma, she carried an inhaler as faithfully as other children held toys. Since her mom died 3 years back, the mansion felt colder, emptier. A string of nannies came and went, their patience worn down by isolation and one emotionally distant employer. Emily's room was painted with wild forests and happy animals' fantasies for a girl who had no real companionship. When Richard remarried, Emily had clung to the hope of feeling mothered again. But with Rebecca now focused on her unborn child, Richard seemed to grow even more distant, as if Emily were in the way. Rebecca Hamilton Blackwood came from an old Virginia family. Her last name still whispered with respect in elite circles, despite the fortune long since eroded. At 35, marrying Richard had seemed like a way to reclaim some security. But over the past few months, something in her husband's tone toward Emily had chilled her. She began to document the subtle moments, phrases, timings, strange remarks. Them in a leather journal she kept hidden in her nightstand. "We can't build a future with that girl clinging to us," Richard had once muttered after a tense dinner. Rebecca wrote it down, along with the dates, the moods, the disturbing coldness. She didn't yet know what she was looking for, only that something was wrong. She planned to confront him after the baby was born, but she was starting to wonder if time was running out just 20 minutes from the Blackwood mansion. Sarah Thompson dug her fingers into the soft dirt of her backyard garden, sweat dripping from her brow. At 37, she moved with the confidence of a woman used to triage, and Traumatil Riverside Hospital shut her out in a cost-cutting move. Her name stamped on the layoff notice, signed by none other than Richard Blackwood himself. Her husband, Jake, a fierce protector of the local ecosystem and a longtime forest ranger, had been vocal about Richard's latest land grab, a massive resort slated for Hollow Creek, which would bulldoze acres of wild habitat. From the tree line, a scarred German shepherd named Max watched her work. His coat was sun-bleached, his posture alert. Max had once been a top-tier search and rescue dog, but his handler died 2 weeks ago in a wildfire, leaving the dog to roam. On instinct alone, something had drawn Max here, some pull he couldn't explain. He lingered near the Thompsons' modest home, silent, watchful, waiting. The morning began quietly, with sunlight spilling through the French doors. Richard poured himself coffee, then looked up and casually said, "Thought I'd take Emily out today, just the two of us." Rebecca blinked in surprise, holding her prenatal vitamins mid-air. "That's nice," she said slowly, searching his expression. "Where to?" "Little hike through Hollow Creek," Richard said, his voice smooth like the pitch he used at investment meetings. "Thought I'd show her what Daddy's been working to preserve." Emily's eyes lit up. It was the first spontaneous moment of affection from her father in as long as she could remember. She left her breakfast half-eaten and threw her arms around his waist. "Really, Daddy? Just us?" Richard stiffened but nodded. "Yep, be ready in 30, and put on your boots." She ran upstairs in a blur of excitement. Rebecca watched her go, then turned to her husband. "That's sudden. You've never even mentioned hiking with her." Richard's smile was thin. "Things change, especially when you're about to be a dad again." He held her gaze a beat too long, and something in his voice made the hairs on her arms rise. Just over half an hour later, the forest blurred past Emily's window as Richard's black Range Rover twisted through Hollow Creek's back roads. She pressed her face to the glass, drinking in the sunlight as it filtered through towering oak canopies. The trees whispered secrets she longed to hear. "Look, Daddy, a deer!" she pointed with glee. Richard barely glanced up. His mind was replaying a private meeting from earlier that week. He'd met with an old hunting guide, paid him in cash, no names exchanged. The man had scratched his beard, eyeing Richard sideways. "You sure you want to know about that den? Rattlers are mean out there. I need to assess environmental risks." Richard had lied. The man gave directions. Half a mile off trail, marker 22. Remote, lethal, just the kind of place a tragedy could disappear without questions. Richard parked the SUV and glanced at his Rolex. Everything was falling into place. He'd promised to be home before dinner, giving him a perfect window to carry out the plan and return before anyone noticed. "Come on, sweetheart," he said, holding out his hand. "There's something I want you to see." Emily skipped. Along the dirt trail beside him, her inhaler safely zipped in her pocket. He kept up cheerful small talk, pointing out trees and flowers like any doting dad-just in case hikers crossed their path. They passed a couples, who smiled at the charming sight of a father and daughter enjoying the woods. No one looked. Twice, no one saw the intent behind Richard's eyes. At marker 22, he turned off the main trail. "This way," he said. "Shortcut to a secret spot." Emily paused. "The sign says, 'Don't leave the trail.'" "Signs are for folks who don't know these woods," Richard replied, his voice gentle. "Daddy knows exactly where we're going." And with that, he took her hand and led her deeper into the shadows. As they walked, Richard's thoughts drifted back to the day 7 years earlier, when his world cracked in half. He'd sat by the hospital bed as his adoptive mother struggled through her final breaths, and finally told him the truth. He wasn't their blood. He'd been left at a clinic as a newborn, nameless, unwanted, the man who had built his identity around the proud Blackwood lineage. Its genius, its discipline, its power, was suddenly a stranger in his own skin. That illusion of legacy, of superiority, had crumbled like old paper. Then came Rebecca's pregnancy 4 months ago, and something inside Richard clicked with terrifying clarity. This child, his child by blood, deserved it all. A legacy unsullied by the past. Emily, his daughter, from a fleeting marriage to Christina, suddenly felt like an intruder, a crack in the foundation. She was a leftover, a threat, a mistake. "We're here," Richard said, pausing near a wide, ancient oak whose twisted roots snaked into the slope like fingers. The hollows were perfect, just as the hunter had described, silent, hidden, crawling with danger. Rattlers, Emily, unaware, smiled at a butterfly hovering over a wild bloom. "It's really pretty, Daddy. Come look," she called, skipping closer to the gnarled tree. "Come here, sweetheart," Richard urged gently, positioning her in front of the hollow. "There's something cool I want to show you right inside that root there." She crouched to peer into the shadows, squinting into the darkness. And that's when he did it, smooth, almost casual. His boot slipped on the loose dirt purpose, and with a swift, brutal shove, he pushed her. She fell forward with a scream, right into the black mouth of the den. The dry, skeletal warning of the snake came half a second too late. Then strike. A sickening yelp tore from Emily's lungs as venomous fangs buried into her calf. "Daddy," she cried out in pure terror, trying to scurry away from the writhing snake. Richard stood motionless. His eyes didn't even blink. No fear, no regret, just cold detachment as blood bloomed through her jeans. The snake, job done, slid back into its lair. "Oh my God, Emily." Richard gasped, finally stepping forward, playing the part. "Hold on, I'm going to find help." Emily looked up at him through tears, her body shaking with pain, and that's when she saw his eyes. There was no panic there, no fatherly love, just calculation. "Please don't leave me," she whimpered. "I'll be right back," Richard lied smoothly, stepping backward. "You need to stay still. It'll slow the poison." "I'm running. To find a ranger, okay?" She nodded weakly, but her gut knew the truth. He was leaving her for good. He turned, jogged toward the trail, then ran, fast and light, not once glancing back. As her sobs echoed behind him, he rehearsed the story in his head. The tragic accident, the frantic search for help, the grieving father. It would all sound convincing enough. Back beneath the tree, Emily lay gasping. Her small frame writhed as venom surged through her veins. The forest around her seemed to shift friendly sunlight, turning cold and cruel, trees stretching taller, darker. She tried to crawl from the roots, dragging herself through the fallen leaves. Her asthma, kicked into overdrive by fear, narrowed her airway like a closing fist. She clawed for her inhaler, took 2 trembling puffs. Her leg was swollen, pulsing, streaked with angry red veins climbing toward her thigh. "Help me," she whispered, but no one answered. That's when the realization fully hit her. Her father had done this on purpose. She'd seen it in his face, seen the monster behind the man. A sound in the underbrush made her freeze. Her breath caught, her mind filled with new horrors. What now? Another snake, a wild animal coming. To finish what her dad had started, a shadow moved. Then out of the foliage stepped a massive German shepherd, dark and scarred, his coat dusted with mud and time. He was silent, stalking. His amber eyes locked on hers like a sniper scope. Emily stopped breathing. "Good dog," she whispered, terrified. The shepherd's ears perked. He sniffed the air. Blood, venom, fear. The dog advanced, slow and sure. Sniffing her leg, she winced. But instead of biting, he nudged her arm. Her eyes opened wide. No rage, no threat, just something else. Intelligence. Recognition. "You're not going to hurt me?" she asked, reaching out. The dog leaned in, pressing his muzzle into her palm. His fur was coarse, warm, alive. "I'm Emily," she whispered. "My dad left me here to die." The shepherd turned toward the hollow, his body tensed. He growled a low, dangerous rumble. Then, inching forward, he examined her wound again. She flinched as he got close. "It hurts," she sobbed. Something shifted in the dog's demeanor. A decision. He turned to the tree root, nose twitching, then lunged forward without warning. A fresh rattle, a hiss. The shepherd didn't flinch. His jaws snapped around the snake before it could strike. He shook it, hard spine snapping with a crunch. He tossed it into the underbrush, lifeless. The snake lay still. Emily stared in disbelief. The dog, her protector, stood between her and the danger, his breath heavy, tail stiff, and for the first time in hours, she felt safe. Returned to Emily with blood dripping slowly from a thin gash along his snout, though otherwise unharmed. "You came back for me," Emily breathed, her voice full of wonder as she reached out a trembling hand. The German shepherd allowed the contact, lowering his head gently. Then, with a rough tongue, he began licking her palm, slow and deliberate. The edges of the world seemed to blur, a small body growing heavy as the venom made its way deeper through her veins. Somewhere deep inside, Emily knew the danger was far from over. "I feel so tired," she whispered, her head nodding. But the dog nudged her hard against her shoulder, demanding she stay upright. Something in his push, in the fierce insistence of his stare, told her, "Don't close your eyes." "Do you have a name?" she asked, her voice fragile, trying to speak just to stay awake. "Where's your collar?" The shepherd sat beside her, still as a statue, watching every sound in the trees. Minutes passed, maybe more. A child poisoned, a dog with no master, bound together by something neither could name. Then the shepherd rose. He took a few steps away and turned, glancing back. "I can't walk," Emily said softly, motioning to her leg, now purple and twice its size. The dog came back, stood beside her, then moved again, more urgent this time. He barked a sharp, jarring sound that shattered the stillness. "You want me to go with you?" she asked, the thought finally breaking through the haze. She tried grabbing a nearby sapling for balance, but her body betrayed her. She collapsed with a strangled cry. The shepherd paused, head tilted, watching. Then, he did something unexpected. He lay beside her again, pressing his warm, steady body into her side. "You're staying?" she asked, wrapping her little arms around his thick neck. But no, he had another plan. After a moment, he pulled away, barked louder this time, and ran ahead about 50 feet before turning to face her. His eyes locked onto hers. "Wait here. Don't leave me," she begged, fear rising fast. He stopped, turned back, came close just once more, licking her cheek with a surprising tenderness. Then, without hesitation, he turned and disappeared. Into the trees, Emily sobbed quietly as he vanished. "Please come back." She whispered into the air that suddenly felt colder about 2 miles away. Sarah Thompson was pinning damp clothes to the line outside the small country home she shared with her husband. Jake, their 5-acre lot, backed right up to Hollow Creek. Woods, the same forest that developer Richard Blackwood had been slowly buying up, piece by piece. It wasn't lost on Sarah that the same man who had forced her out of her nursing job at Riverside Medical was now threatening the land her husband had spent years protecting. "Rotten bastard," she muttered, pinning a worn t-shirt with practiced speed. 3 months without work, and the nearest available hospital job was a full hour away. Gas alone would eat them alive. Jake had left before dawn, promising trout for dinner. Things were tight, but they still had each other and this little slice of earth. She was reaching for another pin, when she saw something move just beyond the oak tree that marked the edge of their land. A large German shepherd stood still as stone, watching her. There was something deliberate about his stillness. His eyes never left hers. "Well, hey there," Sarah called softly. "You lost handsome." The dog barked a single sound and then took a few steps forward before stopping again, turning his head toward the woods and then back to her. It wasn't random. That behavior, that urgency, it wasn't new to her. Her instincts flared, the same gut feeling she got when a trauma patient couldn't speak but was begging for help in every other way. The dog barked again, repeated the motion. "Forward, look, bark, bark." Sarah's years of working with EMS and rescue teams kicked in. She narrowed her eyes. "You're showing me something," she said under her breath. She dropped the laundry basket, her mind already running through triage protocols. That's when she noticed the smear of red on the shepherd's muzzle. Not his blood, someone else's. Her heart rate jumped. She ran into the house, grabbed her first aid kit and cell phone. No signal, she didn't expect one out here. But preparation was everything. When she stepped back outside, the dog was pacing at the tree line, clearly agitated. She walked slowly toward him. "Okay, big guy, show me." The shepherd let her approach. As soon as she was within reach, he turned and trotted into the forest, pausing every few seconds to make sure she was following. Sarah hesitated at the first line of trees. Jake would probably say, "Don't go," but her nursing instincts wouldn't let her turn away. "I swear, if this is a wild goose chase," she muttered, then stepped into the woods. The dog led with confidence, always just far enough ahead to stay visible. They pushed deeper. Minutes passed, 10-15. The trails vanished. When she rounded a massive oak tree, she saw her, a little girl, slumped against a moss-covered log, her leg hideously swollen, her skin paper white and damp with fever. Sarah dropped to her knees. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" The girl stirred, eyes barely open. "You brought help." "I'm Sarah," she said gently, her hands already examining the leg. "What's your name, baby? Emily?" the girl said. So faint Sarah had to lean in. "A rattlesnake bit me." Sarah's hands froze. He what?" she asked, stunned. "He pushed me. He didn't want me anymore." The words were said so plainly, so heartbreakingly innocent, that Sarah felt a cold wave run through her chest. She looked back at the bite pad. Swelling, necrosis, setting in. "You've been like this a while," she said to herself. "How long ago, sweetheart? Dunno sun was higher." Sarah checked her watch. It had been nearly 2 hours since she started laundry. She pulled out her phone, again still no service. "We need to get you to the ER." She packed away her kit, careful but fast. "This is going to hurt, honey, but I'll be as gentle as I can." She lifted Emily, the girl gasping at the pain. The dog moved beside them like a sentinel, watching every step. Together, they began the slow, careful walk back. Emily's head fell softly onto Sarah's shoulder, her breath shallow. "Hang in there, champ," she said to the dog, pacing beside her. The hike back through the thick woods drained every ounce of Sarah's strength, Emily's limp frame growing heavier, her shallow breaths more fragile with each passing step. The dog moved ahead sometimes, scouting the trail, only to circle back quickly like he sensed the urgency pulsing through the air. "Stay awake for me, sweetheart," Sarah murmured when the girl's eyes started to close again. "Tell me about the dog. What's his name?" "Not." A stray shepherd stumbles across an abandoned child, fends off a rattlesnake, then goes out to find help. It was almost too much to believe. "Well, whoever he is, he's looking out for you now," she said, adjusting Emily's weight in her arms. "He's a German shepherd. They're trained for rescues like this." Emily's lips barely moved. "A hero dog." "Yeah," Sarah said, heart aching. "Exactly like a hero dog." As they broke through the dense tree line onto the old Thompson property, the shepherd bolted ahead, barking urgently toward the house. Jake's truck was parked out front. He must have cut his ranger shift short. "What?" He froze mid-sentence when he saw her, his wife staggering forward with an unconscious girl in her arms. A muddy German shepherd close behind. Rattlesnake bite. Jake tossed the rod aside and rushed over, carefully, lifting Emily from Sarah's arms. "Who is she?" "Where her name's Emily," Sarah cut in. "The dog found her. Led me right to her. She said ... Her father shoved her toward the snake and left her there. Get on the phone, call 911. Now, Jake picked up the phone, but stopped short, his eyes narrowing. Lines are dead. Storm must have knocked them down. Damn this. Mountain. Jake laid Emily gently on the living room couch. Sarah was already elevating Emily's leg, pressing a cool cloth over the grotesquely swollen bite. The punctures had turned deep red, angry with venom. "We've got to keep her as still as possible. Too much movement, and the venom will spread faster." The dog had followed them inside and refused to leave Emily's side. When she whimpered, he nuzzled her hand, licking it softly. "Check your truck's CB radio," Sarah told Jake. "We might still get the ranger station." He nodded and hurried outside. Sarah focused on the girl's ashen face. Her lips were pale, her breathing shallow. "Emily," she said softly, tapping her cheek, "can you hear me? Stay with me, baby." Emily's eyes cracked open. "Hurts," she whispered. "I know," Sarah said gently, brushing damp hair off her forehead. "We're going to get you help." "Didn't want me anymore, 'cause of the new baby." Everything clicked violently. Richard Blackwood, the real estate tycoon, head of the hospital board, the same man who'd approved her unit's layoffs. The man trying to flatten the protected Hollow Creek forest, had he really tried to kill his daughter to hide something? Jake burst back in, shaking his head. CB's fried, must have taken damage in last week's storm. He noticed her look. "What's wrong?" "She's Blackwood's daughter," Sarah said flatly. Jake blinked. "With the developer." Sarah nodded, and she said he pushed her into a rattlesnake nest. On purpose, left her to die. Jake ran a hand down his face, the horror sinking in. "He's been pushing hard to build in that area. Hollow Creek's so remote, no one hikes it anymore." "Exactly," Sarah said. "If she died there, no one would find her. Not for days, maybe never." The shepherd growled low, as if he understood. Jake looked over. "Where'd this dog come from?" "No collar, just found us in the woods. Led me right to her." Sarah checked Emily's pulse again. It was getting faster, too fast. "Jake, we're out of time. We need to go." "I'll pull the truck around." But then, outside, tires crunched on gravel. Jake peered through the window. "We've got company." Sarah joined him. 3 vehicles approached. One was a police cruiser, another a black Range Rover she recognized, and behind them, a local news van. "He's already looking for her," Sarah muttered. "And he brought cameras, wants to look like a grieving father." Jake's jaw tightened. "We've got to stall him, figure out a way to protect Emily before he gets near her." The shepherd stood by the window now, fur bristling. The cars parked. Richard Blackwood stepped out of the SUV, face a mask of controlled worry. Sheriff Coleman emerged from the cruiser, Deputy Martinez close behind. The news van opened to reveal a familiar TV reporter and cameraman. "He's putting on a show," Jake growled. "Public search, all for the cameras." Sarah gripped his arm. "Emily needs a doctor. But if we give her to Blackwood now, She vanish, Jake said. Or worsen other accident. The shepherd growled again, deeper this time, eyes never leaving Blackwood. Jake studied the dog. That shepherd knows him. Look at his reaction. Blackwood and the sheriff approached the house. We need to play this smart, Sarah said under her breath. Follow my lead, and keep that dog back, but don't let him out of sight. Jake placed a firm hand on the dog's collar. The shepherd didn't resist, but his body stayed taut, locked onto the man outside. There was a knock on the door. Thompson residence, came Sheriff Coleman's voice. Sarah cracked it open just enough. Afternoon, Sheriff. What brings you here? The sheriff took off his hat. Mrs. Thompson. This here's Mr. Blackwood. His daughter went missing earlier today during a hike. We're checking the surrounding properties. Richard Blackwood stepped forward, his expression perfectly rehearsed. My little girl disappeared out at Hollow Creek. We think she might have wandered off the trail. We're desperate to find her. His voice broke slightly just enough for the cameras. Sarah didn't move from the doorframe, heart racing. Emily lying just feet away behind her, tears shimmered in his eyes, his voice hitching like a man who'd rehearsed the pain. Please, if anyone's seen her, she's only 6. She has asthma. I'm going out of my mind. From inside, the house, the German shepherd, exploded into a deep, menacing bark. Jake held the dog back, muscles tight, as it lunged for the front door. Apologies, Sarah said quickly, smoothing her voice. He's real protective about the place. Richard's gaze cut past her, momentarily sharp at the dog's growl. You've got a German shepherd, he asked, obsessed with dogs. If she saw one out there, she might have tried to get close. There was something in the way he said it too calculated, too precise that made Sarah's skin crawl. Behind her, she heard Emily stirring on the sofa. A small whimper of pain slipping out. He's not really ours, Sarah answered. Careful now. Just wandered in a few days ago. We figured he was a stray. Sheriff Coleman frowned toward the barking. Mind if we step inside for a quick look, Mrs. Thompson? It's standard. In these situations, Sarah froze, thoughts spinning. Sheriff, can I speak with you? Alone. Coleman blinked, surprised, but nodded. Sure. I'll wait right here, Richard added smoothly, though Sarah caught how his eyes kept drifting toward the doorway like he was trying to see past her. She stepped outside and gently shut the door, leading the sheriff a few feet away down the porch. Sheriff, this is going to sound insane, she whispered, but I think Mr. Blackwood hurt his daughter on purpose and left her in the forest to die. Coleman's brows lifted. That's a heavy claim, Mrs. Thompson. I know, Sarah said, glancing back toward the house. But listen, that stray dog. He found a little girl barely conscious snakebite. She told me her name's Emily Blackwood. She said her father shoved her toward the snake nest, and then just walked away. Coleman's face turned hard. You're telling me you found her like that? She's inside, on our couch, her legs swollen, the color's all wrong. She needs help, fast, but she's terrified of him. And that dog. Sarah looked back again. He loses it any time. Blackwood's nearby. The sheriff watched her face closely, weighing every word. I've known you and Jake a long time, Sarah. You're not the type to throw out wild stories. I get it, sounds nuts, she said, her voice tightening. But please, just look at the girl first. Talk to her without him around. One look at that bite, and you'll know she didn't just wander into trouble. Coleman stood there, silent for a beat. Then he nodded. All right, wait here. He turned back toward Richard, speaking in a low voice Sarah couldn't catch. She noticed the flicker in Richard's face, a tight flash of something cold, before he forced back on that same worried dad routine. The sheriff returned. Wait, show me the girl. Inside, Jake had gently carried Emily to the spare bedroom and was pressing fresh cold packs against her leg. The shepherd lay beside the bed. Watching alert but calmer now that Richard was no longer in sight, Coleman paused at the door, eyes narrowing. Even without being a medic, he could tell this was serious. Her leg was blotchy, grayish. Her breaths came short and wheezy. That's a rattlesnake bite, he said under his breath. All right, you heard what she said, Sarah reminded him. Coleman moved closer to the bed, voice soft. Hey there, Emily. I'm Sheriff Coleman. Can you tell me what happened? Today, her eyes fluttered open. When she saw his badge, her body tensed, like she remembered. That's right, he said gently. You're safe now. Can you tell me how you got hurt? Her lower lip quivered. "Daddy took me to the woods," said there was a surprise. She swallowed hard, then he pushed me at the snakes and ran away. Tears rolled from the corners of her eyes. He didn't come back. Expression darkened. He'd been on the force nearly 3 decades. He could read truth like a map, and this little girl wasn't lying. "The dog saved me," she whispered. "Killed the snake. God help." Like he understood he was being spoken about. The shepherd lifted his head and licked her trembling fingers. Coleman straightened. "She needs a hospital fast. I'm calling it in." He eyed the dog again. "That mutt found her." Jake nodded, led Sarah straight to her. It was unreal. "Mighty strange," the sheriff agreed, pulling his radio. "I'll keep Blackwood outside till this is handled." Once the sheriff stepped out to call dispatch, Jake looked at Sarah. "What now? You think Blackwood's just going to walk away?" Sarah didn't answer. She watched the dog, now curled protectively against Emily's side. "We keep her safe," she said. "Whatever it takes." Outside, Richard was pacing, the panic mask he'd worn so well earlier was cracking his movements sharper, his eyes colder. Sarah watched as he ended a call and returned to the sheriff, this time with a new kind of swagger. From his inside coat pocket, he handed Coleman a set of papers. "What's he handing him?" Jake asked under his breath. Coleman scanned the documents, his jaw tightening, then slowly made his way back to the house. Sarah's stomach dropped. "That's not good," she muttered. This time, the sheriff didn't knock. He stepped inside, voice heavy. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, we've got a problem." Jake moved in front of Emily instinctively. "What kind of problem?" Coleman held up the papers. "Mr. Blackwood's provided medical documents and legal custody forms. He's already spoken with Judge Harmon, who just granted him emergency custody. I've got no legal grounds to stop him." "You're not serious," Sarah said, her voice sharp. "That child said he tried to kill her." "We're going to investigate that fully," Coleman replied. "But right now, by law, I have to honor the judge's order." Blackwood's arranged a private ambulance. It's already en route. Jake stepped forward. "Sheriff, you know, U.S., we've lived here our whole lives." "You gonna hand her back to that man?" The sheriff's face twisted. "The law's the law, Jake, without solid evidence." "Then arrest me," Sarah said. "What?" Jake and Coleman turned to her. "At once, arrest me for interfering. For obstruction. Whatever you have to call it, just don't let him take her." "Look, I don't care if it's kidnapping or obstruction or whatever. Just don't let that man take Emily until we're absolutely sure she's safe." Before the sheriff could speak, a fragile voice called out from the bed. The shepherd instantly turned, resting his muzzle on her hand. "Please," she whispered, "don't make me go with him. He doesn't even want me anymore." The fear in her words cut through the room like a blade, rattling even Coleman's hardened nerves. He rubbed his temple, weighing the situation. "Sheriff," Jake said quietly, voice low, "you've got a daughter too. What would you do?" The question landed heavy. Outside, the low rumble of an approaching van, probably the medical transport. Richard arranged added pressure. Coleman made the call. "Here's the plan," he said. "Mr. Blackwood can accompany his daughter to the hospital. But I'm riding along, and we'll have more than one doctor look at those injuries." It wasn't perfect, but it bought them time. Sarah nodded, still tense. "And the dog?" she asked. "Emily doesn't want him to leave her." Coleman looked at the shepherd, who hadn't budged from her bedside since the moment they arrived. "Hospitals don't usually allow dogs inside," he said. "He saved her," Jake argued, "and that dog's reading Blackwood like a book." Coleman hesitated, then nodded. "I'll talk to the paramedics. No promises." As he stepped out, Jake turned to Sarah. "This isn't over." She gripped his hand, both of them watching the shepherd curl closer to Emily, his amber eyes locked on her face. "No," she said softly. "It's just getting started." The transport pulled in, lights flashing quietly, no siren. It parked beside the sheriff's cruiser. 2 paramedics hopped out, moving fast, hauling a stretcher. From the back, Richard Blackwood stood nearby, his act as the anguished father fully in place now that the cameras were aimed at him again. He paced dramatically, dabbing at dry eyes. Inside the Thompson home, Sarah finished checking Emily's vitals. "You're going to be okay, mi amor," she murmured, though the girl's breathing was weaker now, her small frame trembling from the venom, slowly shutting her down. "Please," Emily gasped, "don't let him take me." Sarah clutched her hand. "Sheriff Coleman's going with you, okay? He's not letting your father be alone with you." The shepherd growled low and steady, pressed tightly against the bed as footsteps neared the house. Jake had slipped an old leather lead around the dog's neck. But whether that would actually hold him if he lunged at Richard was anyone's guess. Coleman stepped in first, followed by the medics. "How's she doing?" he asked. "Worse," Sarah admitted. "She needs anti-venom now." The woman in scrubs leaned over the bed. Her badge read Torres. "I'm Monica. Can you tell me?" "Your name, sweetheart?" she asked gently. "Emily," the girl replied, barely audible. "We're going to take good care of you." Monica checked her vitals, face tightening. She turned to her partner Davis. BP's tanking, stage 3. Envenomation, possible organ risk. As they prepped her for transport, Richard appeared at the doorway and the room froze. The shepherd's growl grew into a feral snarl, hackles raised, body tight like a coiled spring. Jake struggled to keep hold of the lead. Emily's heart monitor spiked, panic rising in her vitals and in her eyes as she shrank into the pillows. "Daddy's here," Princess Richard crooned, fake sweet. "Everything's gonna be just fine." "Sir, step back," Monica snapped. "You're upsetting her. She's critical." Coleman laid a firm hand on Richard's shoulder. "Mr. Blackwood, wait outside while we stabilize her." Richard's expression darkened, but he caught himself, face softening again. "Of course, whatever she needs." He backed out, but not before shooting a pointed look at the shepherd. "That animal needs to be secured," he muttered. "If it's Curran," Davis turned to Jake. "Hospital policy. That dog needs a—" Muzel Jake didn't flinch. He saved her. "He knows something's wrong with Mr. Blackwood." Davis shrugged, pulling a muzzle from their kit. "Then he wears this. Or he stays behind." Jake moved cautiously. "Okay, buddy," he whispered. To everyone's shock, the shepherd stopped growling and sat still as stone. He let Jake fasten the muzzle without a sound. It was like he understood. "That's unreal," Davis murmured. With Emily loaded onto the stretcher, the team moved toward the ambulance. The shepherd walked beside Jake, alert and steady. Sarah grabbed Emily's inhaler and the few things she had in her pockets. Outside, Richard hovered near the ambulance with Coleman, under the watchful eye of a local news crew. His face shifted when he saw the dog, but quickly recovered. "Is a dog really necessary?" he asked, voice calm. "Emily doesn't even own a pet." Coleman kept it simple. He found her in the woods, led Mrs. Thompson straight to her. Seems protective. Richard gave a tight smile. "How convenient. Though I'm not sure a stray should be around a child in that condition." The shepherd's growl returned, low but fierce. The muzzle kept it muted, but the intent was clear. "I'll ride with her," Richard said, moving toward the vehicle. Coleman stepped in. "Actually, Mr. Blackwood protocol says I accompany victims in cases under investigation." "You can follow us in your car," Richard faltered. "Investigation." "My daughter got lost. She had an accident." Coleman shrugged. "Standard protocol, until we know more." Monica's voice cut in from inside the ambulance. "Let's go BP's crashing." Richard clenched his jaw. "Fine, I'll drive." Behind you, he turned to the cameras. "All I want is for my little girl to be safe." As the ambulance doors slammed shut with Coleman, and, after much convincing, the shepherd inside Sarah pulled Jake aside. "I don't trust him," she whispered. "He's too smooth, too controlled." Jake nodded grimly. "I'll tell. Him in the truck, you ride with Monica in her car." Monica, off duty today, had parked her sedan just behind the ambulance. She'd offered Sarah a ride when she learned she was a nurse and had treated Emily first. The convoy began rolling out from the Thompson property, ambulance in front. Then Richard's black Range Rover, followed by Jake's beat-up pickup, and finally Monica's small car. Sarah's news van brought up the rear, still rolling tape. On what they thought was a touching story, just a broken father, desperate to reach his daughter in time. Inside the ambulance, Emily floated in and out of awareness as Monica and Davis worked frantically to stabilize her. The German shepherd lay beside the stretcher, staying as close as the medical gear would allow. His gaze locked on Emily's face like he was guarding something sacred. Sheriff Coleman studied the dog, clearly intrigued. "Never seen a dog do this with someone they just met," he murmured to Monica. She didn't look up from adjusting Emily's IV. "Animals know?" she said softly. My abuelita used to say dogs can smell darkness in a person. Just then, Coleman's radio crackled. Sheriff Martinez here, we've got a situation. Coleman pressed the mic. Talk to me. Blackwood's Range Rover just peeled off Route 16. He's veering toward Old Miller Road. Brows drew together. That road doesn't go to the hospital. Exactly, sir, it doesn't. Stay with the girl, I'll deal. With Blackwood, Coleman ordered. Then he turned to Monica. Change of plans. We're heading straight to County General. Lights and sirens, no detours. Monica gave a tight nod and passed the order to the driver. The ambulance surged forward, siren wailing through the still air. Coleman keyed his mic again. Jake, Blackwood's gone rogue. Can you pick him up? Jake's voice came back. Urgent. I've got IZs burning rubber down Miller Road, heading toward the private airfield. Coleman's chest tightened. It all clicked. He's trying to flee. The shepherd's ears shot up at the tone shift, his attention shifting briefly from the girl to the sheriff. Martinez Coleman barked into the radio. Block off every access point to that airstrip. Do not let him leave the county. On the stretcher, Emily stirred. Her voice was faint. Eyes still closed. He's leaving again. Coleman leaned closer. Who's leaving, sweetheart? Daddy, she whispered. He always leaves when he does something bad. Her words, laced with the quiet sorrow of a child who's learned far too much, sent a chill through the entire rig. Not this time, Coleman whispered, unsure if she even heard him. As County General came into view, the ER team was already waiting curbside. The ambulance skidded to a halt, and personnel rushed out. The shepherd growled low, agitated by the sudden swarm of strangers, but Monica soothed him with a calm, practiced word. The dog stays with her. Coleman instructed the baffled ER team. Don't ask, just do it. There was no arguing with his tone. As they wheeled Emily inside, the shepherd stayed tethered to Coleman's belt, moving with the poise and discipline of a soldier. He ignored the gasps and stares as he entered his mission crystal clear. Inside, the ER shifted into high gear. Dr. Leon Abernathy, the on-call toxicologist, took one glance at Emily and got to work. Severe crowlid envenomation, likely over 6 hours ago, he announced, Get Crovab now. Full vials. And I want ultrasound in here, stat we. Need to rule out compartment syndrome. Coleman stood just outside the crash zone, gripping the shepherd's leash tight. Moments later, Sarah burst in, out of breath, her cameramen left behind. They started anti-venom, Coleman told her. Doc looks solid. Sarah scanned the room, her reporter's mind already analyzing. Abernathy's the best in the state. She's in good hands. Her gaze shifted to the dog, still standing guard. How's he holding up? Shockingly calm, Coleman said, surprised himself. It's like he's been here before. That sparked something. In Sarah's mind? Sheriff, you think this dog's trained? Maybe SAR. She squinted at the shepherd. Him showing up like that, all alone, smack in the middle of Hollow Creek, during a thunderstorm. Coleman thought back. There was that wildfire. 2 weeks ago, park ranger from Nex County died in it. Ranger McCoy, Sarah confirmed. He had a service dog, a shepherd. Coleman's expression shifted. They never found the dog. Together, they looked at the animal anew. The discipline, the loyalty, the way he led them straight to Emily, it all fit. McCoy's dog was named Max, Coleman said slowly. Max, he tried. The dog's head snapped to attention, ears alert, recognition clear. Well, I'll be damned, Coleman muttered, under his breath. Just then, a stir at the ER entrance broke the moment. Richard Blackwood had arrived and he wasn't alone. A man in a sleek suit trailed him, flanked by 2 police officers from the next county over. Sheriff Coleman, the suit said briskly, I'm Jeffrey Palmer, counsel for Mr. Blackwood. We're here under court-ordered immediate custody transfer of his daughter. Coleman stiffened, his hand unconsciously brushing his holstered sidearm. Mr. Palmer, your client is being actively investigated for attempted murder and child abandonment. Palmer smiled like a shark. Unfounded allegations. We have sworn statements verifying Mr. Blackwood was searching for Emily. The Thompson woman's claims stem from a personal vendetta. He fired her from Riverside Hospital. The legal tactics were clever slick, but Coleman had seen this playbook before. That'll all come out during the investigation, he said calmly. Until then, Emily stays under police protection. These officers will assume custody, Palmer countered, gesturing to his backup. Judge Harmon's order is clear. Coleman could read the subtext. Judge Harmon was known to side with developers like Blackwood. Political strings were being pulled. Max suddenly growled, low and menacing, straining against his leash, eyes fixed on Richard. The man flinched backward. Despite himself, control that beast, Palmer snapped. That beast is a certified SAR dog, Sarah interjected firmly, stepping in. He belonged to Ranger McCoytha, man who died in that forest fire. Max found Emily, her father. Left her. Blackwood's face twisted. You can't prove any of this garbage. Actually, came a voice from the hallway. All heads turned. Rebecca Blackwood stepped through the doors, one hand resting on her pregnant belly, the other clutching a worn leather journal. Her face was pale but steady. Rebecca, Richard hissed, shifting into soft tones. You shouldn't be out of bed. I'm exactly where I need to be, she said, voice ice cold. She looked straight at Coleman. It contains Richard's own words, his plans for Emily. Silence gripped the room like a vice. The moment cracked when Richard lunged. You had no right, he snarled, charging toward Rebecca. But he never made it. Max broke free from Coleman's grip like a bullet, hurling himself at Richard. Despite the muzzle, the shepherd struck with military precision, toppling the man. Hard to the floor. A deep growl rumbled through the muzzle as Max stood atop Blackwood's chest, paws planted firm. Then it settled, said Sheriff Delgado calmly, his voice final. The hospital corridor froze as he slipped handcuffs around Richard Blackwood's wrists. The man's designer suit was a mess-grist, dirt-stained, and ripped at the shoulder where Max had struck. But worse than his clothing was what lay beneath it. The false image he'd worn for years had crumbled. Child endangerment and abandonment, Delgado declared, his voice echoing with the weight of nearly 3 decades on the force. You have the right to remain silent. As he read the Miranda rights, Rebecca instinctively took a step back. Richard spat, seething as Delgado led him away. You don't understand what you've done. Rebecca didn't even blink. I know exactly what I've done, she said quietly. I protected a little girl, something you never had the guts to do. The 2 deputies who had arrived with Palmer shifted uncomfortably, clearly rethinking where they stood now that the truth had surfaced. Mr. Palmer, Delgado said, turning to him. You'll want to read this before making any legal moves. He passed the journal to the man with steady hands. Palmer took the journal slowly, reluctance written across his face. Taken out in cuffs, Max, the German shepherd, finally eased out of his defensive posture. Sarah knelt beside him, carefully removing the black muzzle from his snout. That's it, buddy, she whispered, her hand stroking his coarse fur. We're guarding her this whole time, weren't you? Inside the emergency room, Dr. Abernathy remained laser-focused, his skilled hands moving like clockwork as he administered the anti-BP. Dropping again, a nurse called, heart rate 140 and climbing. Start a second line, Abernathy instructed, and prep 2 units of plasma. She's coagulopathic. Sarah re-entered the trauma bay, her nurse instincts clicking in immediately as she scanned the room. Abernathy's face was taut with concern. Real bad. The venoms wrecked her system. If we'd gotten to her in the first hour, he didn't finish the sentence. Sarah's throat tightened. Abernathy hesitated, then nodded toward the girl. Talk to her. She might still hear you. Familiar voices can help with stabilization. Sarah moved closer to the bed, slipping her hand into Emily's frail, icy one. Emily, it's me, Sarah. You're safe now, honey. He can't hurt you anymore. She blinked hard, trying to steady her voice. You've got to keep fighting, sweetheart. Max is waiting for you. At the mention of the dog's name, Emily's eyelids fluttered faintly. Sarah looked up at the monitor, a subtle shift in rhythm. Max, she repeated softly. That's his name. He used to be a search and rescue dog. Lost his partner in a fire. But then he found you. Delgado filled him in fast. So Blackwood's in custody, Jake confirmed, rubbing a hand down his face. Thank God. What about Emily? Delgado's voice turned grave. It's not good. Docs are working like hell, but she's been down. Way too long. Jake's shoulders sagged under the weight of it. If only we'd gotten to her sooner. You and Sarah did what no one else could, Delgado reassured. Right on cue, Max padded over to Jake, pressing gently into his leg like he knew. Jake rubbed his ears. "What happens to Max now?" he asked. "His handler's gone," Delgado considered. "Likely they'll reassign him." Jake felt a surprising pang at that. In just one day, Max had shown more loyalty and heart than most people he'd ever met, Delgado added, unless someone with experience were to file for adoption. Jake met his gaze. "You think they'd let me? Especially after what went down today." Their conversation was cut short by a burst of chaos from the ER alarms screamed. The team sprang into motion. "She's coding," a nurse yelled. The heart monitor flatlined. "Start compressions," Dr. Abernathy barked, already moving. "Charge to 200. Get a pediatric tube tray." Sarah was gently moved back as the team surged into place. She stumbled into the hallway, shell-shocked. "She's in cardiac arrest," she choked out to Jake and Delgado. Max let out a low whine, pacing, his anxiety building. He crept toward the trauma doors but was blocked by a nurse. "The dog can't be in there." Jake stepped forward. He saved her life, found her when nobody else could. The nurse hesitated, glancing toward Abernathy, who didn't look up. His hands were focused on Emily's chest. "Clear," he called. Emily's small body jerked as the jolt surged through her. The screen flickered, still no rhythm. "Charge." "Agent 250, Abernathy ordered, resuming compressions. Sarah turned away, overwhelmed. The scene was heartbreakingly familiar. The frantic commands, the adrenaline, the bitter line between life and death. But this was different. This was Emily, a little girl who had already survived so much. Max's whining grew louder, frantic. He pawed at the door, trying to get to her. "Let him in," said Rebecca from behind them, her voice low but steady. She had been watching the whole time. "Please." The nurse looked to Delgado, who nodded. "Might help." She stepped aside. Max slipped in, brushing past the chaos like he belonged there. He reached Emily's side, gently laid his head near her arm, and began to whine. "Sir," the dog, a tech started. "Wait," Abernathy cut in. His eyes were locked on the screen. Emily's erratic rhythm was changing. Something's happening. Not yet steady, but showing signs of life. Abernathy resumed chest compressions, his trained eyes fixed on the cardiac monitor. "Stay with us, Emily," he whispered. "Keep fighting." Max stood unmoving beside the bed, his amber gaze locked on the little girl's face as if willing her to breathe again around him. The medical team worked with focused urgency, injecting medications, repositioning lines, calling out vitals in rapid succession. Just outside in the hallway, Sarah clung to Jake's silent tears, streaking her cheeks. Rebecca stood off to the side, her face a storm of emotionless remorse. Resolve, fear. "I should have known sooner," she said under her breath. The way Richard treated her, like a burden, the separate meals, the strange bruises, the string of nannies who quit without notice. "I saw the signs, but I kept making excuses." "You didn't freeze when it counted." Coleman told her gently that journal you found could be what keeps her alive. Placing a protective hand on her belly, Rebecca nodded slowly. "He kept saying our baby had to be a true Blackwood, a pure heir. Like he was obsessed. I thought it was just old-school nonsense until I found that journal." Her voice cracked inside the ER. A new sound pierced the tension, a slow, steady beep from the monitor sinus rhythm. A nurse called out, her voice, trembling, pressures rising. "ATA, over 45 and climbing." Abernathy stepped back, sweat on his brow. "She's back. Stabilize Hermov. Her 2 ICU now, and give another round of antivenom in 2 hours." He ordered. The room collectively exhaled. Emily remained unconscious, her condition fragile, but she was no longer slipping away. Max curled up beside her, his head resting near her limp hand. No one dared move him. "I've never seen anything like it." A nurse whispered to Abernathy. "He just ... knew. Animals pick up things we miss." The doctor replied, watching the shepherd's intense stare. "I've seen therapy dogs do incredible things, but this?" He shook his head in awe. Out in the hallway, Abernathy shared the guarded update. "She's holding steady, but still in critical danger. These next 24 hours are key." "Can we be with her?" Sarah asked briefly. Abernathy nodded. "She's being moved to the pediatric ICU. Only one visitor allowed at a time, excluding the dog, apparently," he added with a faint smile. "He's earned his place." As they prepared to follow the gurney to the elevator, Jake's phone buzzed. He answered, then froze. That was Deputy Martinez, Richard Blackwood. Escaped during transfer, the fluorescent lights of the hospital seemed to sharpen as Sheriff Coleman turned to Jake, escaped. His voice low and sharp. During what part of the transfer? Claimed chest pains, Jake said. When the deputy leaned in to check, he overpowered him, stole a nurse's car from the lot. Coleman was already on his radio. Martinez, this is Coleman. I need the full report and get an APB out on Blackwood now. Turning back, his jaw clenched. Rebecca, you'll need protection, Thompson. We'll stay close to Emily, Jake said, wrapping an arm around Sarah. But, Sheriff, if Blackwood ran, it's because he's desperate. The unspoken threat hung heavy. If he could hurt his own daughter, he wouldn't hesitate to silence witnesses. Deputy Lewis will be posted outside the IC. Coleman decided, nobody enters without ID or my clearance. Rebecca clutched the journal, tight her knuckles. Pale, he's coming for this. She whispered, it's got everything, dates, places, what he planned for Emily, even mentions of other women. Coleman's eyes narrowed. Other women. Rebecca nodded grimly. His first wife Emily's mom, Christina. He always said her hiking death was an accident, but there are notes in here calling it a necessary step. The words chilled the hallway. Richard Blackwood hadn't just attempted one murder, he might have killed before. Give it here, Coleman said, holding out his hand. I'll get it copied and into evidence now. As Rebecca handed it over, Abernathy stepped out from the ER. MLEs heading to ICU, conditions stable for the moment. The gurney rolled into view, pushed by nurses, accompanied by machines beeping and humming. Max followed like a shadow, never leaving her side, somehow avoiding every wheel and wire, his head close to her small hand, only one in at a time. Abernathy reminded gently, and Mrs. Thompson, your medical background could be fell. This Venom case isn't behaving like any I've seen. Sarah nodded, grateful for the chance to stay with Emily as they moved toward the elevator. Coleman leaned toward Jake. I have to oversee the manhunt, but this hospital wasn't built for security. Jake's face tightened. You think he'll try something? I think he's got nothing to lose, Coleman said flatly, and with his money and contacts he could get in from any angle. We can't guard every door. What are you thinking? Jake asked. Coleman hesitated. Once she's stronger, we might need to move her somewhere, safer, somewhere unexpected. Our house? Jake said without pause. It's remote, we've got space, and Sarah knows how to care for her. It's also the first place he'd look, Coleman pointed out, but keep it in mind. For now, stay close to Emily and Max. That dog's got better instincts than most officers. As the sheriff headed out to mobilize his team, Jake returned to the others. Emily was already on her way. Up, Max, still trotting alongside, having somehow convinced everyone that he belonged her permanent guardian. The search is on, Jake told them. As they waited for the Elevatorth pediatric ICU, sat on the hospital's third floor, designed with dim lights and muffled noise to promote recovery. When they arrived, Emily was already hooked up to monitors, lying still as Stone. Max was beside her, as always, his eyes never leaving her face. A nurse stepped forward, her tone soft but firm. ICU access is restricted to immediate family only. I'm her stepmother, Rebecca said, quickly own hand resting instinctively over her belly as if shielding the life growing inside. While Jake paused, unsure how to explain their bond to the unconscious girl lying between them. We were the first to find her, Sarah offered, her voice soft but steady. I'm a nurse, and Dr. Abernathy asked me to stay close and monitor her condition. The hospital nurse gave a nod, apparently satisfied with that explanation. And the dog? She asked, glancing at the shepherd. Jake hesitated. Therapy trained, he specializes in trauma response. It wasn't exactly a Limax's search and rescue background, included comfort work for survivors. The nurse narrowed her eyes, but the way Max calmly acknowledged her presence with a polite wag softened her suspicion. Only one visitor at a time, she reminded, then returned to her post. Rebecca stepped forward first. She entered slowly, almost unsure, stopping just short of the bed. For several moments, she simply watched Emily breathe shallow, quiet. Then, as if summoning courage from some hidden place, she reached out and gently took the girl's hand. I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears rising. I should have done more. I should have seen the signs. Max, watching from the floor like a sentinel, didn't shift an inch, but his eyes locked onto Rebecca's face. His quiet scrutiny almost felt human, as though weighing her words, her regret. After nearly 10 minutes, Rebecca returned, her face blotchy with tears, but her jaw firm. She looked so breakable, she said to Sarah and Jake. Like a bird with hollow bones. Sarah went in next, slipping into her professional mode. Her eyes scanned the monitors, checking vitals and IV flow. The numbers were low, but stable. Millie's small body responding slowly to the antivenom working through her bloodstream. She pulled a chair close and sat, wrapping her fingers gently around the child's. "You're safe now," she whispered. "We're all here, me, Jake, Rebecca, ... Even Sheriff Coleman, and Max, of course." As if on cue, Max lifted his head, slightly, moving closer to the bed. "He hasn't left you for a second," Sarah added, brushing back Emily's hair. "He's special, you know, a real rescue dog. Lost his partner in a wildfire, but he didn't give up. He found you, baby girl. He came for you." Maybe Emily couldn't hear her, but Sarah kept talking. Her voice was soft, steady, the way a mother talks to soothe a fevered child. Jake and I were thinking, when you're better, maybe you'd come stay with us for a while. We've got a big backyard, plenty of space for Max to run. I could teach you about the garden, show you how to grow your own strawberries, ... Double quotes, her voice wavered, emotion tightening her throat. Would you like that? The silence in the room answered for her only. The steady beep of the monitor filled the space. Sarah blinked back tears and kept speaking, guided by some primal instinct that told her the girl needed to hear she wasn't alone, even in unconsciousness. Out in the hallway, Jake wore a trail in the tile with his pacing. Rebecca sat nearby, notebook open, her pen moving furiously across the page, capturing details while they were still raw. The ICU stillness was only broken by the occasional squeak of nurses' shoes or the whisper of a curtain being drawn. Then a security officer appeared, Thompson, slightly flushed and visibly uneasy. "There's someone downstairs," he said, "asking for you. Says it's about the Blackwood case." Jake straightened. "Named Diane McCoy. Says she's the widow of Ranger McCoy." Jake's eyes locked with Rebecca's. "Tell Sarah where I've gone if she comes out," he said, already following Thompson toward the elevator. His mind raced. Ranger McCoy, the man who'd perished in the same fire that Max had survived. Could his wife have heard about today already? At the front desk stood a woman in her early 40s, shoulders squared like a soldier. But her face carried weeks of grief. The moment she spotted Jake, she stepped forward. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Diane McCoy." Her voice held together, but barely. "I heard you found my husband's dog." Jake gave her a long look. "How'd you know? Small towns talk? A German shepherd rescuing a girl from a venomous bite that spreads quick?" She took a breath. "When I heard the description," her voice cracked, "it has to be Max, doesn't it?" Jake nodded. "We believe so." He responded to the name, and Sheriff Coleman knew him, recognized the training. Relief hit Diane like a wave. Thank God. After the fire, they said he was just ... gone. Frank would have been heartbroken. Her voice faltered. "Can I see him?" Jake hesitated. "He's in ICU with the girl. Hasn't left her side since we got her in. He's protective. I'm trying not to disrupt anything." Diane's face softened in understanding. "That sounds like Max. Frank trained him to guard the injured until given a formal release. He once sat beside a stranded backpacker for 19 hours through hail, darkness, everything until the chopper landed." Jake's eyebrows rose. That story tracked exactly with Max's behavior. "All right," he said finally. "I'll bring you up, but I should warn you her father's the one who left her out there, and he just escaped custody." Diane's expression changed instantly. "I used to be MP military police. I know how this goes, and if Max still responds to me, I can help if things go sideways." Jake gave a short nod, and they stepped into the elevator. As they ascended, he filled her in what the girl had suffered, how Max had tracked her, how close it had come to tragedy. Diane absorbed every detail silently, her brows pinched tight. "He found her in the woods," she finally asked. "Tracked her alone," Jake nodded. "Led Sarah straight to her, even helped defend her from the snake." Diane blinked, her eyes shining. "Frank always said Max was more than a partner. He was a protector. Guess he was right." As they stepped off the elevator, Sarah emerged from Emily's room. Jake introduced Diane quickly, explaining who she was to Max. Sarah smiled, tired but genuine. "He's been unbelievable," she said. I've seen trauma response animals, but this, he's different. It's like he knows. Diane looked toward the room. Can I see him? I won't come in or disturb the child. I just need to know he's all right. Sarah nodded. Of course, but let's be still fragile. Diane approached the door silently and paused in the threshold. Inside, Max lay beside Emily's bed, his head low but eyes alert, watching over her like a sentinel. When her scent reached him, his ears flicked and his head turned sharply. Max, she whispered, her voice cracking. The shepherd stood, his body caught between recognition and duty. His tail twitched, but he stayed put. Good boy, Diane murmured, hands at her sides. Stay right there. You're doing what Frank trained you for. At her words, Max gave a soft whine but didn't move his choice clear. Diane stepped back, tears tracking silently down her cheeks. He's made his decision, she said, voice steady now. He's locked in. In SAR work, that's what we call it, when a dog fully commits to the victim. He won't leave until she's safe. The silence broke when Deputy Lewis burst. Through the gate, breathless urgency carved into every line of his face. Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson, Sheriff Coleman just called in. They've got a lock on Blackwood's phone. He's coming this way. 3 months had passed like a fuse, each day a step forward, each night a quiet battle won. Inside the Thompson home, once a weary reflection of hardship, something new had taken root, healing, hope. Autumn had rolled down the mountains in waves of deep gold and scarlet, blanketing the Blue Ridge in colors of survival. Emily swung gently on the porch, her little legs kicking just above the floorboards. Beside her, Max lay watchful as ever, his massive body still but ready. The rattler's bite had left its mark. Her leg was still weak, the muscles stubborn in recovery. The nightmares hadn't stopped completely. But the darkness that used to cloud her eyes, it was lifting. You're getting stronger, baby girl, Sarah said, stepping out with a tray of cookies and lemonade. Dr. Wilkins said your blood work was flawless. Last visit, Emily smiled genuinely. Now it no longer looked borrowed or forced. Max and I made it all the way to the big oak tree. She beamed. No stops. That's nearly a quarter. Mile, Sarah replied, trying not to sound like she'd been peeking from the kitchen window. You'll be lapping us soon. The porch door creaked, and Jake stepped out, rubbing dried paint off his hands with an old rag. That back room, the one that used to be piled with broken furniture and boxes. He'd made it into something bright. Soft yellow walls, butterflies on the trim. Mail's here, he said, handing Sarah a stack one envelope heavy with courthouse weight. Sarah's hands trembled. She didn't need to read it to know, but still, she opened it. Her eyes scanned the page and welled up. It's official, she whispered. Final approval. Effective today? Emily froze. So I can stay. Like ... forever. Her voice was small, hopeful, scared to believe. Jake crouched down in front of her. You're one of us now, sweetheart. For real, Emily Thompson. She launched herself into his arms so hard it nearly knocked him over. Max leaped to his paws and circled them, tail wagging, a soft whine of joy in his throat. My forever family, Emily whispered into Jake's neck. In that moment, everything black. Return, the hospital standoff. Max's growl that stopped it all melted into something whole. The surgeries, the hearings, the sleepless nights all pointed to this one sacred truth. She belonged. Sarah wrapped her arms around them both, the court papers still in her hand. Forever and always, she murmured. The sun dipped low as a familiar crunch of tires came up the gravel. Sheriff Coleman had taken to stopping by often. The gruff, no-nonsense lawman had become something of a grandpa figure during Emily's recovery. Evenin', folks, he called, stepping out of the cruiser with a box under one arm. Brought news, and a little something for Deputy Bray. Over there, Emily hurried toward him, still limping a bit, but faster than ever. Sheriff Coleman, Max and I made it to the Big Oak today. He grinned. Is that so? Well now, that's real impressive. He handed over the box, thought, this might be fitting. Emily peeled away the paper slowly, reverently. Her eyes went wide. What is it? That Coleman said proudly, is an honorary deputy certificate. The county voted on it. You're officially the youngest one in Blue Ridge history. Or she ran her fingertips across the embossed seal. Thank you." Her voice was hushed. Coleman shook his head. "No, sweetheart, thank you. Took more guts than most grown-ups to get through what you did." As Emily showed Max her new badge, his nose bumping it like it mattered, Coleman turned to Jake and Sarah. Sentencing came in. Blackwood got 25, no parole for 50. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Good, after what he did. We don't need to think about him anymore. The memory still lingered. Richard Blackwood's desperate lunge through the ICU hallway. Max's warning snarl, the guards who wrestled him down before he could reach Emily again, Rebecca's journal, and the truth it laid bare had crushed any defense his lawyers had mustered. Rebecca called yesterday, Sarah added quietly. She's okay. Still with her mom in Charleston? Baby's due next month. She's sticking with the name, Coleman asked. Frank, Jake said. After the Ranger, they all turned as a dusty Subaru pulled in. Diane McCoy, the Ranger's widow, she came by weekly, now helping with Max, walking Emily through therapy. Technically, the shepherd was hers, but when she signed those ownership papers, she didn't hesitate. Frank would have wanted Max where he's needed. She'd said, "Some things just belong." Diane got out of the car and joined them on the porch, nodding thanks as Sarah handed her a glass. "How's our warrior today?" Officially, a Thompson. Sarah smiled, holding up the adoption papers, and apparently, now a cop. Diane chuckled. Frank would have loved every bit of this. He always said Max wasn't just a search dog. He had a calling. As the grown-ups talked, Emily sat on the steps, arm wrapped tight around Max's thick neck. She leaned in close and whispered something that made his tail thump against the wood. "What's the secret, Deputy?" Coleman teased. Emily looked up, her face serious in that way only kids can manage. "I told Max, bad things can still bring good. My dad hurting me was the worst, but it brought me to you." The words landed like a soft punch to the heart. Jake swallowed hard. That's powerful, Em," Max taught me. She said simply, "He lost his person. I lost mine. We found each other." As night fell and the cool mountain air drifted in, Emily began her bedtime ritual. Every night, she wrote a letter each one to a child she hadn't met yet. A child like she used to be. Sarah had sent one to the local paper. It got published. Now, a children's center wanted to print them all. Tonight's letter began the way they all did, Emily's careful, confident handwriting looping across the page. "Dear kids who feel scared sometimes, the ones who are supposed to love us the most can be the ones who break us the deepest. But I've learned that for every person who does you wrong, there are so many more ready to lift you up. My first dad tried to hurt me, but then I met my real family. And sometimes the heroes don't wear capes. They come with fur and 4 legs. Don't lose faith. Love shows up when you need it the most." She signed it the way she always did, Emily, Thompson and Max, adding a little paw print beside her name. As Sarah tucked her in for the night, Max curled into his usual spot by the bed. Emily let out a sleepy sigh. Mom. The words still hit Sarah right in the heart. "Yes, baby, you think kids like me, the ones who had a bad beginning, you think they'll find their real families too?" Sarah smoothed her hair back gently, pausing a second to speak from the truth in her bones. "I believe love knows how to find its way, just like Max found you out there in those woods, when it felt like no one ever would." Emily's eyes closed, content with that. "Good night, Mom. Good night, Max. Good night, me Valenti," Sarah whispered, switching off the light. Outside the door, Jake was waiting. He wrapped her in his arms, both of them quiet, listening to their daughter's breathing slow, safe now, under the quiet protection of her 4-legged guardian angel, who would have thought, Jake murmured into her hair, that the worst day of her life would become the start of the best days of ours. Sarah leaned into him, watching the moonlight stretch through the window, casting soft shadows across the little bed where child and dog slept peacefully. A picture of healing something that had felt so far away just 3 months before. As Emily says, she whispered back, "Sometimes heroes have 4 paws, and love always finds the ones who need it most." Let me tell you something from someone who's been around long enough to know the deepest scars in life. Sometimes they're the soil where the strongest roots grow. Emily's story, abandoned by her own father, only to be found and saved by a loyal German shepherd, ain't just a tale. It's a reminder a living truth passed down from the quiet. Pain we've all lived through. We've all felt betrayed. Some of us were left by the very ones who should have shielded us. We've stood in storms so fierce we thought we'd never see light again, just like Emily did. But somehow, like her, we found a hand to hold, a voice that stayed, a place that felt like home. And more often than not, it wasn't family by blood, it was family by choice. The ones who don't run when things get hard, the ones who show up and stay. There was a time when neighbors watched each other's kids, when the town came together if someone was hurting. This story calls back to that, to those old-school values we still carry deep in our chest. And Max, that shepherd, he ain't just a dog. He's the kind of loyalty the world forgets too fast these days. So as we watch our kids and their kids walk into a future full of noise and change, let's hold on to this one unshakable truth. Our greatest defenders might not always look the way we expect. Sometimes they've got fur. And real love always finds its way to the ones who need it. Just like it did for Emily. Just like it did for us. And just like it will. For every soul still waiting in the dark,